Hi, everybody. It's Steve here, and you're about to listen to the podcast recording we had with Anil and Andy of Bango. It was a great discussion covering so many great topics, and we've decided to split this one into two parts. So you're about to listen to part number one. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this, the latest in our series of podcasts brought to you by the team here at Export to Japan. And for this particular episode, I'm really pleased to welcome two really interesting and very experienced guests from a wonderful company that's had some really good success in Japan. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about that and how these guys have gone about achieving it. So I'd like to introduce and welcome. We have Anil, who's based here in the UK, and we have Andy, who is over in Japan. Anil and Andy from Bango. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. And yeah, really good to have you both on board. Now, these two guys have been working for a really fascinating company. I had the chance to learn a little bit about their story, and it's a very fascinating one. And I intend to pick their brains and understand as much as we can to learn their wisdoms and learn their knowledge about how they've gone about the Japanese market. And I'm looking forward to diving into that conversation. And to get that going, I think we should just learn a little bit more about the company itself. So could I go over, maybe, Anil, if you could kick off, could you tell us a little bit more about the background and history of Bango, please?
Sure. And thanks, and hello, everybody. Looking forward to this conversation over the next half hour or so. So let me give you a short summary of Bango. Bango is a software technology provider that has a platform used by some recognizable names: Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Samsung, and a whole range of different media companies, streaming movie companies, streaming audio companies, lifestyle companies that you'll be very familiar with. And so why do they use Bango? Well, what we do for them is we help them reach people online via their mobile phones, via their PCs, so that people can discover and pay for the content and services they want. So if you're a Japanese customer, for example, and you're at the Amazon Japan website, you can pay for goods and services, or you can pay for Amazon Prime Video if you want some entertainment, and you can charge those payments to your mobile phone bill, your cell phone bill. So you don't have to put a credit card online. You can actually click a button, and the Bango system magically works out where you are in the world, what sort of telco network you're connected to, and allows you, just by tapping that button, to charge the cost of the service or the cost of the purchase to your phone. And we do that in many, many different markets, including Japan, where our business is very big.
Great, thank you. That's a great introduction. And Andy, if I could come over to you, you're obviously the key man in Japan working for Bango and representing Bango. Help us just understand a little bit more about your relationship with Bango. How did you get involved with Bango? What's the history of your relationship with the company?
Previously, I worked with the Ray Anderson and Anil here with us today. We have the worked together for the previous company, which is another Cambridge-based the company for the iTech, which provided the user interface for the high-end computer. Now it's called the Linux, but the previously called it was a Unix. That was a relationship we started in 1989. So we have a quite long relationship with over 30-something years.
But but Andy and I both just left school at that time. Of course.
Of course. And actually, that is a really interesting point to kick off here, isn't it? The before we dive into the detail of your company and how you've gone about the Japanese market, the fact that you guys have known each other for so long and have got that relationship and clearly a strong relationship with a lot of trust and respect there both ways. And interesting that you carried it into the new company. I mean, that's one certainly key point that's a takeaway already is sort of understanding that and appreciating that.
I think that is a key theme in doing business. Japan relationships are very important.
Yeah, clearly, yeah, and I agree with that too. And it's just so fascinating to see how that's worked out with you guys and the way that you've got that long-term relationship. And I'm sure that will be a theme that comes out more in this discussion as we go ahead.
There's a bit of interesting color as well about the Japanese origins of Bango that the listeners might be in. I think first of all, the name Bango was actually derived when we started the business from a Japanese word for number. And the reason for that was one of our first innovations when we started the business was with the first generation of mobile phones, which had an internet capability, but those of you that are old enough will remember it was slow, particularly rich user interface compared to today's mobile phones, today's smartphones. We came up with the idea of allowing people to tap a number into the keypad of a mobile phone instead of trying to work out how you type a web address in. So numbers obviously very quick because phones are designed to enter phone numbers originally, at least. And so we were trying to work out what we call a company that links numbers to the internet on a mobile phone. And my co-founder, Ray Anderson, Andy mentioned, a long-standing colleague and friend as well. His wife is Japanese, so that's one of the origin points. And she said, well, in Japan, we talk about Bango cards, telephone numbers and things like that. So we quickly looked it up, and the Bango domain name was available. So that's the origins of the Bango number. And also, actually, both Ray and I will tell you that it was seeing the iMode mobile phone in Japan in the late 1990s that was one of the sparks of inspiration for us to start the Bango business. So there's some good origins of Japanese relationships and Japanese ideas that fed into the origins of the very start of Bango.
Yeah, that's so fascinating to hear, and yeah, what a lovely story and a great connection to Japan there again. And I know from previous discussions that you've had experience with the Japanese market from previous organizations that you were involved in, and the connection you made there with Ray and Ray's wife being Japanese and things. There's obviously some passion for the market there, but from a sort of commercial business point of view, what were your thoughts in those early days with Bango and the Japanese market? Was it always your intention to move into Japan? Did you see that as a key strategic market? Tell us a little bit more about those early days in relationship to developing your business with Japan.
I think the general point that can be made and will be acknowledged by most people is Japan is a very technological society, and anybody that's ever visited Japan will know that. It's embedded into the way people live their lives. And Japan has often developed product leadership ahead of the West. If you think about the move from the good old days of desktop computers to small mobile computers, laptops, that the design credentials came out of the Japanese market originally. Mobile phones also, if you visit Japan, you know Japan well, you'll see that the mobile devices are absolutely built into people's lives. I mean, there's some fantastic things you can do with mobile phones in Japan. You can go and sit on a train and actually purchase your ticket using your mobile phone and Bluetooth beacons and things. So the whole experience is integrated around the phone. So Ray and I knew that there would be a lot of inspiration we could take from the Japanese market. However, in the early days, the NTT Docomo, the giant Japanese telecommunications company, had defined this really breakthrough capability on mobile phones called iMode, internet mode. But it was an environment really designed for the Japanese consumer, and so originally Japan was a market was a country that served its own market, and so while they were interested in what Bango was doing, especially as we had a Japanese name, it wasn't entirely clear how we would work together in the early days. But one of the lessons Ray and I had learned from the past working with Andy was you need to be persistent if you're going to do business in Japan, and the first meetings you'll have, perhaps even the first few years that you're focused on the Japanese market, you may not get an immediate payback. But building both those relationships, as we've already touched on, but also demonstrating to your potential Japanese customers and partners that you are serious about their market. You're not just on a world tour and you have to stop to Tokyo half a day. That really does build up, and it accumulates into a level of seriousness that your better customer will notice. So investing in the broadest sense of the word investing, not just money, but your time. Investing in the Japanese market is critical to making headway.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And I really want to emphasize that because I think it's such a valuable point you've brought out there. So from your perspective, you sort of understood and you knew that investment of your time and your budget and your effort would be necessary to kind of build those relationships and build the trust with the potential Japanese customers. Would that be a fair assessment?
I think he was going to say, I mean, Andy can comment on this as well, but from my point of view, as a Westerner, having Fiji, I think, twice in Japanese market, Andy may claim it's entirely down to him because he was involved in but my experience says that, that investment of time and energy. And there's a third characteristic as well, which I was going to talk about as we wrapped up, I think it's worth touching on now, which is be consistent to what you say you're going to do. So you will build your credibility in Japan if you say you're going to do something with your business and you do it. The Japanese set a lot of store by you following through with actions. Words aren't enough. So your actions have to be consistent with the words. So if you say, for example, that we intend to launch Japanese language, you need to do it because they'll remember that you said that the year before or 3 years before. If you say you're going to set up a Japanese office and you're going to hire somebody like Andy, do it because they'll ask you how far you've made that progress. So that consistency as well as persistence is really important.
Yeah, again, please, Andy, go ahead, jump in.
The PDCA, plan to check action, is very important in every organization. So that makes the things very consistent among the Japanese corporation. So the Bango, even previously a joint venture with Ray and Anil, previously there was a year we followed up the PDCA. Well, that made the business very successful in the previous time and this time with the Bango too.
Yeah, got it. And Andy, just to expand a little bit and bring some of your thoughts and wisdom into this, you're in a very unique position from our point of view and from our listeners' point of view, in that you're a Japanese national, you're based in Japan, and there was clearly a certain point where the opportunity came for you to go and join Bango, and I guess Anil and Ray were keen to get you on board, and you would have had to make a decision there of thinking, well, should I, whatever you were doing previously, should I leave a role and should I go and join this company? From your perspective as a Japanese person, what do you think are some of the important things? If there's other foreign companies coming into the Japanese market in the tech sector that are thinking, I want to find my man on the ground, I want to find my Andy Suzuki, and I want him to come and join and help build our Japanese business. From your perspective, what are the important things that you would look at, when you looked at Bango and other companies, what are the important things that a Japanese person would look at to try and really feel confident about the foreign company's ability to succeed in the Japanese market? Are there any thoughts you could share on that?
Yeah, well, certainly, probably, I'm pretty sure not just me, but many people have the same opinion. I think probably the three things I should raise. The first point is the long-term commitment, especially Japanese customers. They rely on very important part of their business. They certainly I think it's very critical. So commitment, as Anil said, the setting up the local entities or hiring local staff, or even they seconding someone from the UK to Japan. Those kind of a commitment is very important. And the second is in the technology sector, the following the global partnership is very important. So then it's important things that the company to think globally, but they act as the local. So adjust for the local market. That's very important. Some company think globally and they act globally too. That tends to fail. But if the company is too much adjust the local, that's also fail too. So, right. So it's need we need to have the balance, and the balance management is understands those the importance of the balance. Then I think that we're doing a quite the balance, the management for the global and the adjustment to the local. And the third point is the executive teams in the UK understand the Japanese business and Japanese culture. When you see the Bango, as Anil said, the two founder had lots of the experience in Japan with the Japanese business for many years. That's the key things, and that's also the key point for someone, the decision point to someone to join the company like the Bango.
Thank you. That is amazing wisdoms you've shared there. Those 3 points and the sort of sub points within each of them are really, really interesting. And particularly that middle one I find so fascinating. I mean, all 3 of them are so good and so relevant, but talking about, thinking globally, but also acting locally. But the point you make about within that also finding the balance point of acting locally, not necessarily going too far, but going far enough. And then also the great point you make about the local presence, whoever that may be, or whatever that sort of entity may be. In your case, it's you, Andy. It's having your input, but also the executive team back at the head office understanding and being flexible enough to kind of listen and adapt and be aware of the local culture. And that I guess that harmony of that working successfully has probably been another big key success for you guys, and should be something for other companies that are following along behind you to really think about, is getting those points right. Yeah, really, really good.
Yeah, actually it's timely to make that observation, because Andy's just spent the last week with our CEO, and it was in Tokyo, and there was really no particular reason to be there other than spending time with our customers and partners and talking about what our plans are for 2023, and it is that investment in time. And you come back every time I do a trip to Japan, I've learned something I didn't know. They come back with more knowledge and more awareness.
Great. Yeah. And I think that's a point very well made, Anil, and that links through to the earlier point you made about how you show the commitment to the market, to your customers, to your prospects, and in fact, internally as well, the commitment to your team or your representation or your colleagues in Japan, just putting that effort in to get on the aircraft and go over there and spend time and talk and discuss and learn. Yeah. Really good, really good themes coming up.
One question I'd like to ask Andy, actually, which has just come to my mind. Andy, in the early days when we were working together, one of the challenges for a Western company, in particularly a Western startup company, is that the financial profile of the business often shows heavy investment in the early years and not really generating revenue profitably until later in the business cycle. And you remember, Andy, very well, I would do meetings with Japanese companies and explain our business model. And one of the questions that will always come back is, how do you make a profit? And Japanese companies, certainly back then with my early experiences, showing a profitable business profile was quite an important part of expressing your validity as a partner. Is that still the case, Andy, do you think? Or do you think Japanese companies are...
Yes, exactly. Still, I must say the legacy companies are still tended to very keen on finding the financial healthiness. Then quite often they ask, can you provide your financial records or tax filing for the last year, just to check a continuity or way their company. So the making sure or presenting the viable continuity evidence to the part of the customers are still important part of the business in Japan. So that's the one of the things that we need to remember always. The judgment.
Yeah, and digging into that, I wonder, again, it's great to have Andy here. Digging into that, I wonder whether it's part of a consequence of the fact that Japanese companies do build long-term relationships. Western companies tend to say, yeah, we'll go with these guys for 2 years and then we'll see in 2 years' time. With a Japanese company, you'll sign a multi-year partnership, and there's an expectation that both parties will invest in that multi-year partnership, long-term partnership. So I wonder, Andy, whether it's part of it is if you're not a profitable company, are you going to be around in 7 years' time? So we need to persuade ourselves that there is a financial stability in your business plan. That means you are going to be here over the long term.
That's very important for the showing the stabilities or continuity for the many years. Should be the Japanese companies.
So just to expand on this, because this is a really fascinating point you brought out, and another great piece of wisdom that we're sharing here. So from the point of view of a company that may still be in an early stage startup and sort of maybe pre-revenue or pre-profit, and it is mainly investment going in at this stage, what do you have any thoughts on how they should present that message when in that situation with a potential Japanese customer? What would your thoughts be on that? Any wisdoms to share there?
I'll go first, Andy. Then, three things I think are important. Number one is show that you have a way of generating a profit that is plausible. If you turn up and you do a presentation really anywhere in the world, but certainly in Japan, and it is not clear how on earth you're going to make a profit out of this business idea, that will be scrutinized. But I don't think Japanese companies mind too much if you're in an investment phase where you require capital, but it is clear how, with progress, with growth, you can generate a profit and you can become a profitable business. So point number one, make sure you've got that clear. By the way, that's good advice anyway for any business in any situation, certainly in Japan. I think number two, when you are in that early phase, and Andy will remember the experience from the first time we worked together, perhaps more so than recently, when you have meetings, try and bring one of your investors along. Invite your Japanese. I think when we chatted initially before this podcast, I think one of the ideas I suggested is, to the extent you're able to, if you've got a Japanese partner that's expressing interest in a partnership with you, invite them to your business, to your offices, to the UK, if that's where you're based. Now, they may or may not take up your invitation, but it will be respected as a genuine invitation. You've got nothing to hide. You are a real business, and you're prepared to welcome them over. So do that anyway, and if they do come over, then you'll have a great experience showing them your business and showing them where you are in the UK. But try and get your investors along. Now we did this, and Andy will remember this. We did this, however many years ago. I don't want to repeat the number. It was that we first worked together, and we were a small company. Pre-Bango, this was a different company, and we brought our investors to the meeting to meet Andy's senior execs and senior management team. And they provided a lot of that kind of credibility that we needed to show that we had serious backers who were with us for the long term to make sure we would be successful.
Brilliant. Great advice. Yeah. Andy, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, that's a very key point for the Japanese, the customers and the partners. In recently, we invite the one of the main investors to the Bango for our partners in Japan, which is the quite a big company. So that gives us a tremendous amount of the credibility for making
great piece of advice.
Companies continue to run for many years.
Yeah, this is such a good point that you guys have brought out with this one, because I think we all know that typically it's often a smaller startup Western enterprise with a great piece of technology or a great solution or a great idea trying to engage with a much bigger Japanese corporate entity. And of course, there's always going to be a question of trust and risk on the Japanese side. And so some of these great points we're bringing out as a theme of this discussion, but in particular, this one of the kind of financing, the financial security, the long-term commercial business plan, they're such important messages to get across to help the Japanese side have more confidence in entering into some sort of partnership. So that's a point really well made. It also reminds me, to be honest, that back in my early days, when with the first software company that I took out to Japan, this is going back 20 years now, I remember making a presentation to a Japanese company that we really wanted to do business with. And in my slide deck, I had a slide talking about our sort of roadmap and where we wanted to get to, which was kind of in line with the theme that we're discussing right now. But I think I'd put a slide up that sort of covered the next 3 or 4 years. And I was talking about some of the product development and where we wanted to go. And then the Japanese guys on the other side said to me, well, that's a really good slide, and we're so interested to see where you're going. But how about the next 10 years? You know, where do you plan to be in 10 years' time? And what products will you be developing? And I sat there thinking, oh, I hadn't really thought about where we'll be in 10 years' time. But again, it's an illustration of the point you're making, isn't it, about the way the Japanese side thinks.
Oh, yeah. And then some of the companies, say, famous management companies like Sony in the days of Morita-san, they had 100-year plans. And it was basically contemplating what human life might be like in 100 years and how Sony Corporation could still be relevant.
Yeah, so interesting. I hope you enjoyed that first part of this two-part series of the discussion with Anil and Andy. Stay tuned. Part number 2 is coming up right now.